Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer. Today we're back with the Wood Elves. This is another replay from my tournament. This time it was Loopy taking the Wood Elves. Orion was one of the options there. Honestly, Orion's not really a meme lord. He's pretty decent, but I had to pick someone for the Wood Elves, so I decided to do Orion and the Ancient Tree Man. So for this particular build, it's Orion up against the Skaven here. We've got two casters, Spellslinger Lower Beast with Manticore Summons and Flock of Doom. And we've got, let's see here, Earthblood and Regrowth here on the Life Mage. We've got a whole bunch of Wild Riders and Dryads all over in Vanguard, and that's more or less it. Pretty straightforward for this Skaven build here. Got just tons of clan rats and Skaven slaves, as well as a few storm vermin, sword and board, a plague priest on his bell, and I believe it's Queek Headtaker at the helm, or Ikit Claw, sorry, on his motorcycle, not on the Doom Wheel this time. Very interesting. And yeah, the Warp Lightning Cannon's already opening up, getting some good shots in at those Spell Singers at the moment. Obviously, all of the Dryads and various units in Vanguard you can see moving up and around, trying to get into a position to start charging in. The squishy Clan Rats here, going to get charged by Wild Riders. Will be a pretty impactful charge here. Those light Clan Rats will take a ton of damage. Granted, the Plague Priest is right on station to help support there. Charging into Spears isn't going to be the best, but, you know, they need to start to disrupt this formation a little bit there. Dryads starting to run in. This group of Wild Riders tried to get back to get at the cannons themselves, but very nicely done by the Skaven player here, protecting with these Clan Rats, with the Storm Vermin and more. These Wild Riders are going to have to pull away here, as they are taking quite a bit of damage. Meanwhile, we do have a Manticore Summon, plus both of the Spell Singers dipping in here and sort of starting to pull these units around a little bit. Looks like one of those artillery crews did actually potentially get shut down. They did come back from route, so they can get back on it. And Horn of the Wild Hunt being popped. Yep, Horn of the Wild Hunt popped all the way across the board, and both the Spell Singers diving in at the Plague Priest here as well. So, yeah, a little bit of a miss on that Scorch there. Or the Plague Breath, rather. But yeah, these Wild Riders juiced up, get a good charge in here. Maybe? Looks like they actually stopped. They could have got a devastating charge into the back of those Storm Vermin there, but as it is, looks like the one Warp Lightning Cannon crew still not able to get back on station, but the other one's still on lines. That's a pretty big issue. Those Wild Riders obviously will take a lot of damage from those Warp Lightning Cannons. A nasty couple of hits right there just takes out quite a few unit models, and that is a lot of power lost, obviously. That being said, Orion is still pretty much completely healthy. He will start to work through those Clan Rats, and even the Storm Vermin will have a hard time against him. Both the Spell Singers also doing quite well. Also, these Wild Riders going to pull away here quickly before that summon pins them in too hard. Actually looks like a friendly summon in the form of a Manticore. And you can see the Skaven player staying nice and tight here. It looks like he's taking some damage. Maybe Orion's been throwing some spears at him, but Orion forces a bit of a blob here. The first summon Manticore devolves, and he uses some of his magic there to get some kills, up to 32 kills so far. Not too bad. Looks like a nice bombardment incoming as well. It's going to do quite a bit versus the unarmored units. Won't do as much versus the Storm Vermin, but still. The mobile Wild Riders, and another nice thing about Dryads in this matchup, in addition to the magic damage, Dryads also do cause fear, so against the lower tier Skaven units, they can rout them off quite easily. It is pretty effective. Granted, they are going to get completely swamped by numbers here. They do have a little bit of support, but Spell Singers continuing to try and go after that Plague Priest there, while the Manticore actually gets on Ikit Claw. This is going to be pretty nasty here. Ikit looks like he might have miscasted himself a bit there, done quite a bit of damage. And a really nice Flock of Doom from that Beast Caster, getting a ton of these high model count Skaven units. That's going to generate a ton of value there. Meanwhile, the Wild Riders just pulling away, catching out this isolated Storm Vermin here. It had taken a Death Frenzy, but yeah. One Warp Lightning Cannon is still online, though. But with the loss of Ikit Claw here, he is currently getting terrified away by the Manticore. That is going to put a pretty significant dent in the balance power. One thing to note about Fear and Terror is units that cause terror are obviously immune to it, which is why I almost always take Ikit on the Doom Wheel to make him immune to psychology, essentially. The Manticore does degenerate. Icket comes back from rout, but it's still not looking amazing for the Skaven. They do have quite a bit of Storm Vermin left, but there are several groups of Wild Riders still mobile despite all the damage they've taken. Looks like a bit of a miss there with the Brass Orb. And these Wild Riders going to charge in here and just start to work through continuously these Skaven units. You can see they all have taken quite a bit of damage, but racking up the kills as well and sticking around until this late game so they can continuously chase Skaven routing units. It's one of the biggest things, obviously, for Skaven is because they're low leadership, they do come back and rout quite frequently. I guess I should say that in the reverse order. They rout and then come back quite frequently, so it's good to have overwhelming mobility. You can see both the Spellsingers on Eagles were able to actually beat down that Plague Priest. Pretty impressive for a couple of She-Elves on silly birds. But Orion himself, just being the absolute Chad that he is, going to tank out all of the rats in the center. Orion's actually really, really good in this matchup. He can take on Doom Wheels, he can take on Rat Ogres, he can tank out a lot of damage as well. Granted, he can kind of get focused by the Skaven a little bit, but it can be pretty tough for him as well. Obviously, the Fear and Terror, the fact that he's unbreakable, and the Area of Effect damage spells that he has are very good in this matchup, so big thanks to Loopy for setting that one in, and well played to Pugnobon as well. Nice full stack of Skaven. Unfortunately, just got rode down by Wild Riders. Tons of Dryads as well, of course. Relatively straightforward build, but 202 kills on Orion himself at the end of the day. Just catching all of the rats, you know, putting them in his bag, and then taking them back to make a nice quilt out of the filthy rat hides, of course, after they've been cleansed in a river or something. As for the Dryads, yeah, they're definitely carrying some Skaven off to do unspeakable things to them in the woods, like that, you know, like that scene from Lord of the Rings, where they're, I want to say it's in the extended edition, they're going through the forest and, you know, keep away from the trees. I forget, I think it's, yeah, I want to say it's Aomir that says that, something like that. Anyway, I'm getting way off track. 105 kills, 2 XP chevrons for these Wild Riders, 168 here. It's interesting that he only could afford to bring the shields on 2 of them. I mean, I guess the extra melee defense does certainly help, and the Skaven can potentially bring some pretty nasty missile play with, like, the Slingers or the Shuriken units, so having the shields helps, but it looks like he wasn't able to maybe afford them on all of them. But regardless, obviously, Wild Riders synergize extremely well with Orion, and just in general, it's going to be a pretty nasty build for Skaven to deal with. On the Skaven side, I think just protecting these Warp Lightning Cannons, I mean, he did the best that he could, but having a few more control-focused units would have definitely helped. Maybe using the Bless with Filth to get some poison attacks on some, like, Slinger-type units, or just any kind of unit that can apply poison to these Wild Riders. Maybe stack that on with Rattling Gunners, potentially. See if you can just really slow them down into the dirt so that they can't just run all over your face like that. I think maybe just bringing... I know it's kind of counterintuitive against a super mobile build like this to say bring more ranged units, but I would also say maybe some high mass units as well. I mean, Rat Ogres will get punished by Wild Riders, especially if they're juiced up with Horn of the Wild Hunt, if they get a clean charge. But with infantry support, the Rat Ogres will do reasonably well, and they have the mass to stop up the Wild Riders and kind of get them, keep them from getting to your squishy center. But obviously, the Warp Lightning Cannons are going to be a good counter there if you can just protect them. Again, maybe just bring a couple high mass units, a couple Rat Ogres, maybe swap in one extra, you know, 1 or 2 extra sort of mid-range type units. Honestly, these Clan Rats with shields, you could probably cut those Clan Rat shields, and personally, I'm a big fan of the Skaven Slave Slingers in this matchup. They can generate some huge value against the low armor Wood Elf units for not a lot. Granted, they're not going to really hit the broadside of a barn, but whatever they do hit, I mean, it's pure volume of fire, 105 unit models, even if they're only doing 7 damage per shot with 1 AP. I mean, it's still 105 AP, theoretically, per volley, right? So, you know, it's something, and especially if you have them en masse. I want to say Bless with Filth applies to ranged attacks. Imbues poison. I'm assuming it does. I actually don't know. I haven't used this spell that much, to be honest, but I'm assuming it Also applies to ranged attacks, so like you can use that Bless with Filth on these Skaven Slave Slingers. They're not going to do a bunch of damage, but they will at least apply poison to Wild Riders, do a little bit of damage, and just continuously bog them down. Again, the Rattling Gunners can be a bit risky here, but they do have this suppression effect, which will reduce enemy speed as well. So if you kind of stack those two together, maybe even bring Gutter Runners. Gutter Runners are really risky, though, because if they get caught by the Wild Riders, they're pretty much done. But in theory, you can... I mean, these guys have poison baseline, so you don't necessarily need Bless with Filth, but with the Snare Nets, in theory, you can... you know, debuff their speed even further. It is kind of hard to pull off, but against that Wild Rider type build like that, I think it would honestly just be safer to maybe take like one Rattling Gunner, just take a bunch of Slingers, and then protect with some Rat Ogres maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.